Howdy doody, Buckaroonies, and welcome back to another episode of Funny Voice Man Talks Words on the Internet. When I was looking to buy my first set of studio monitors, I went and asked my dad which ones I should get, and he told me it was worth it to spend money on good speakers, and it turns out that was pretty sound advice. Later on, when I was looking to upgrade though to some new monitors, I was selling my old pair, but they were missing the volume knobs. A guy ended up making me an offer though, and I just couldn't turn it down. Instead of buying new monitors though, I went out and bought a new Bluetooth speaker instead. I think the brand name was something like Titanic, so that my wife could blast her sick Radio Disney jams down in the kitchen, but we ended up having to return it because no matter how hard we tried, we just couldn't get it to sync. Stupid speaker jokes aside, today we're going to talk about 5 things you should know about when setting up monitors in your home studio. Over the last couple of weeks, I've had the enormous pleasure of borrowing these Atom Audio S2Vs, and they sound phenomenal. It reminded me though that I've never done a video about how to properly set up monitors in your home studio, so I figured why not take this opportunity to sit down and make the video I wish I would have had when I was setting up my studio for the first time. Timestamps are provided below if you want to reference a specific part of the video, and everything we're going to be talking about in this video is linked down in the description if you want to pick something up and help support ya boy right here so I can make more videos like this one. Although this video is not a review of the S2Vs here, I figured I would just share a couple quick thoughts because I know people are gonna ask. First off, yes, they sound really, really good. These are pretty expensive speakers, and I feel like just about any kind of speaker at this price point is bound to sound pretty fantastic. The overall sound of them I would describe as very detailed and very clear. I feel like the transients are extremely punchy and snappy all across the frequency spectrum. The low end is nice and tight and punchy. The mid-range is extremely detailed, and the high end is very extended. The tweeters of these go up to 50K, and I don't know how to describe it other than I feel like there's just an extra layer of air across the entire mix, at least compared to my tannoys. Low end wise, I feel like these really aren't the biggest, deepest, subbiest speakers I've ever worked on. I feel like even my tannoys have a more extended low end response. However, I feel like the low end on these is a lot more accurate, and in the end, that's probably what's more important. I would definitely trust these low end wise a lot more than I would my tannoys. Around the back of the speaker, there are 5 profiles. You have Pure, which is flat, UNR, which is a response curve Atom Audio is known for, and then 3 user profiles. These user profiles are set up using a 6-band EQ as well as a low shelf and a high shelf. I only set up 2 profiles myself. One of them is just a very mid-range focus version, and the other one was a low shelf boost, high shelf boost, and then a boost at around 2K. Having to create these profiles was extremely tedious at best, and honestly, it's a feature I didn't find myself using all that much. That said, I would really prefer to maybe see an update to these speakers where this is all done with an app over Bluetooth or something, because needing to eat up 2 USB ports on my computer just wouldn't really be an option for me. Although making these profiles did kind of suck, I feel like it's necessary to point out that honestly, you're not gonna adjust this all that much once you do get the profiles created and you like the sound of them. I feel like the only time you're bound to adjust these in the future is if you move to a different room. So with that, it's a cool feature, I just feel like it wasn't implemented in the best way. A very big thank you to Atom Audio for letting me borrow the S2Vs here for the last month or so. These things have been a real pleasure to work on and mix on and just enjoy listening to stuff on. And maybe we'll take a little bit of a road trip down to the Atom Audio offices here at some point in the future on the channel to ask them some questions about the S2Vs and maybe learn a bit more about the ins and outs of speaker design. If you're looking at buying your first set of studio monitors, one thing you may have noticed right away is that they do tend to be a bit more expensive, especially when compared to commercial speakers. The higher end studio monitors, like the S2Vs here for example, can even reach into the thousands of dollars for a single speaker. Clearly, this is a giant ripoff and you should just save yourself some cash by buying commercial speakers, right? Well, no. The vast majority of commercial playback systems, like your car's audio system, headphones you might buy off the shelf at a big box store, a TV soundbar, a home stereo, or gaming computer speakers or things like that, tend to sound very exciting and fun to listen to. But in audio terms, this is because they typically have a pretty exaggerated frequency response, especially in the low end and the high end. Although this does offer a bit more pleasing listening experience, it's kind of like listening to a bass boosted remix of everything all the time. Studio monitors, on the other hand, are often very highly engineered to offer a very neutral and analytical approach to audio, and in some cases, like the infamous NS10s or mix cubes, they can be engineered to sound bad, but help you find the flaws in your mix to ensure that it translates everywhere. Obviously, when you're doing something like mixing, for example, you're blending a set of elements together and trying to make it sound as good as possible. However, if you're already dealing with an exaggerated response from your speakers in the lows, mids, or highs, it makes it a lot harder to make good mixing and mastering decisions because you're not really hearing a true version of the sound. One very common misunderstanding, especially among newer producers, is that monitors are not this absolute answer to getting better mixes. They're just a small part of a much bigger picture. In order to effectively utilize studio monitors, at least in the way they were intended, you need a good room to listen in. This obviously means a room with good acoustic treatment to make the listening experience sonically sound, and you need a room that's big enough to properly position the monitors not only for playback and stereo positioning, but get them away from the wall, get them up to the correct height, and isolate them in a way that offers the most accurate playback. With all that in mind, no matter how much you spent on your studio monitors, even if they're the most expensive monitors of them all, you really just can't negate the effects of a bad room. It's kind of like bringing a minivan to a drag race. More often than not, in the case of most home studio owners, if you've set aside $200 to maybe $500 to buy a set of studio monitors and you don't have any acoustic treatment, instead, spending that money on a decent set of mixing headphones will often do you a lot more good and you'll get a lot more bang for your buck. This isn't to say that buying studio monitors is always a bad thing in these situations. It's just important to remember that in these types of cases, the monitors are simply a way to listen back, but when it comes time to make good mixing and mastering decisions, headphones are always going to be the safer bet. Another very common oopsie I see a lot of producers make is buying the biggest monitors they can possibly afford. As a general rule, the larger the speaker, the larger the room needs to be. So while having those big 8-inch monitors will look really cool, sonically speaking, if you're working out of a smaller space, you're really not going to benefit from the added speaker size. In most cases for home and project studios, 5 or even 7-inch monitors are more than enough. This is something I wish someone told me early on because I had a really hard time understanding why my mixes weren't translating well, especially in the low end when I wasted all this money buying the biggest and baddest speakers I possibly could. When it comes to talking about low frequency content, because of how enormous these wave cycle lengths are, you need a pretty big room for them to even cycle properly, and this isn't even getting into the amount of ridiculous acoustic treatment and calibrating a room needs in order to give you accurate low-end monitoring. When you bring your studio monitors home, you might be tempted to just slap them up right on your desk and start frying up some bangers, but there's a little bit more to it than that when finding the correct position for your monitors. First off, you want to try and isolate your monitors as much as you can. This means getting them off your desk onto some isolating foam or rubber risers, or better yet, off onto a pair of monitor stands. In terms of positioning your monitors, the most ideal placement is going to be an equilateral triangle, meaning that the distance between the two speakers and the distance between the speakers to your ears is more or less the same. By setting your monitors up this way, you're avoiding any additional reflections created by the sound bouncing off your desk and back up into your ear meat. You've got the sound arriving at both ears at the same time, minimizing any phase issues, and you've got the monitors set far enough apart to accurately gauge the stereo field of the mix. Another important factor in monitor positioning is setting your monitors up at the correct height, because nobody likes to mix with their nipples, and for that, we're gonna hand things over to Science Cameron. Thanks, regular Cameron, you uneducated eating waffle. Hey world, it's me, your friend Science Cameron, and today I'm very excited to announce that my team and I, through extensive scientific research and peer-reviewed study, have definitively concluded that your ears and your nipples are not the same thing. This is important to understand because high-frequency content, like what comes out of the tweeter of your speaker, is very directional, and your ears need to be more or less in line with it in order to perceive it best. This is the same way that sonic weapons work, and in fact, you could build your own sonic weapons at home. I'd love to show you how, but I'm already on enough watch lists. Low and mid-frequency content, on the other hand, like what the woofer of your speaker handles, is much less directional, and your ears don't necessarily need to be in line with it in order to accurately hear it. So remember, mixing with your nipples is dumb, and you shouldn't do it. Now, back to you, regular Cameron. Another important aspect of monitor placement is getting them away from the walls, at least as much as you reasonably can in your space. Having monitors close to the walls, or worse, right up next to them, creates a ton of problems acoustically, and it just makes your monitors sad, so don't do it. This brings me to another really important point when it comes to monitor selection for home studios though, front versus rear ported monitors. The majority of studio monitors come in two different flavors. You have front ported speakers like the S2Vs and my Tannoy Gold 7s, and you have rear ported speakers speakers like my old Yamaha HS8s. For most home studio situations, front-ported speakers usually make the most sense because they're nice and tight on the bass response and they're more accurate because they've got the big holes usually right at the bottom that blow all that air and hit you right in the big jiggly bits with all those low, lovely bass frequencies. Rear-ported speakers, on the other hand, have a big hole right on the back and require a lot of acoustic treatment to work properly. You need big, heavy bass traps, you need a really good gap between them and the wall, and honestly, they're just a lot more work than they're worth and a lot more work than makes sense in most home studio situations. Acoustic treatment is a huge subject and one that really deserves its own video, but I wanted to cover a few key points that you should know about. First and foremost, you do need acoustic treatment to use monitors accurately. Using studio monitors without acoustic treatment, as my dad would say, is like bringing a camel to a knife fight. It just doesn't make any f***ing sense. When you're setting up your studio for the first time, it's really tempting to buy a whole bunch of those foam panels and foam bass traps and stuff like that because they're super cheap on sites like Amazon. I know, because I did this and I wasted a whole lot of money on these. But I'm here to tell you these really don't do much of anything because they're only really dealing with high frequency content. All this is to say, before you run out and buy a set of studio monitors, do yourself a favor and take some time to either build some acoustic panels like I did on the ones that hang along my angled ceilings, or get some professional grade panels like the ones from my friends over at Acoustics. Making these acoustic panels is really cheap and easy. It's a simple project you can really do in a day, and it's gonna save you so much of a headache later down the line, and it can make your room sound amazing. If I just clap right now, there's really nothing in this room and it sounds incredible to work in. Keep in mind as well that there are a lot of cheap and practical ways to add acoustic treatment to your studio, whether it's adding something like a couch or other fabric-based furniture, adding high carpet or rugs, adding in acoustic curtains, or any other number of things that can help absorb, break up, and diffuse sound in a lot of different ways to make your room sound a bit more neutral. However, every room still needs a little bit of help along the way, and that's where this next tool comes in. The folks over at Sonarworks have developed a software called Reference that does all the sciencey mathy bits for you. All you need to do is take a measurement microphone, go around the room and do a series of tests, and it sorts out all the details, and suddenly you have squeaky clean, neutral audio. One thing I found particularly interesting is if you buy one of their measurement microphones, they profile each and every one of these with its exact frequency response. So you plug in your microphone ID, go around and do a series of tests, and it gives you the literal flattest playback possible. Even if you don't have studio monitors though, Reference can still be beneficial because they have a bunch of headphones that are listed on their website that they've tuned and calibrated with Reference so you can achieve the flattest playback possible with a bunch of very affordable headphones. Full disclosure, I have not even done this or set this up yet. I wanted to try and do this in real time with this video just to capture my first reactions at least as best I can. The folks at Sonarworks got in touch with me probably close to a year ago at this point, and honestly, I just wasn't that interested in this and didn't really believe them. However, working as a professional musician and sound designer, of course, if this is a tool that's gonna give me better sounds and better mixes, it's something I absolutely wanna have. I did see it runs as a system-wide application as well, so even if I'm playing a game or watching a movie or whatever, I can run Reference and have neutral playback all the time, which is pretty cool. With that, they did send me a hat, so we're gonna put on our floppy science cap here and do some measurements. Hope you're ready for this, Callie. It might get sort of loud. Select my measurement microphone, and this is my microphone's frequency. That's so cool. Ear level between the speakers. We can measure the distance between your speakers. All right, I'll take that bet.
Measurements in progress.
So it says my speakers are 6 feet 7 inches apart, and I don't know that I believe it. So we're gonna check. Oh, f you, no way. Okay, I guess we're done. That was a fairly involved process, so let's see my results. That's really not too bad. I'm pretty proud of that. That's right there, I guess, yeah, at 100 hertz gets pretty exaggerated, but otherwise, not too horrible. That's definitely a bit of a concern, but it is what it is. So this is gonna be Adam S2V. Here to assist me off camera is the one and only Leishalicious, and we're gonna try and do a quick blind test at least as best we can. I'm gonna cover my face with this. She's gonna set it to something I don't know, and we're gonna play a couple of tracks of mine that I like the mixes of. Leisha, take it away. Smash the, smash the button a bunch, and I guess whenever you're ready, hit the track. One more. On, whatever, on. that on or off?
Which one's on?
I'm gonna guess that this is on. The green is on.
Yep.
It is on. Okay, cool. Yeah, I feel like I can sort of hear one. Let's try again. 2. Oh, this is so hard. 1, 2. Pause. It's on right now?
Mm-hmm.
All right, 2 for 2. Okay, so there is a difference. All right, one more. I'm gonna say that's on.
Yep.
3 for 3. All right. Well, I'll give it to you, Sonarworks. There is a difference. It is a little bit subtle. I feel like in my case, I can only really tell in the bass end of things, but I guess that makes sense given that the frequency response is so exaggerated down below 100 hertz. So I'll give it to you. That definitely does make a perceivable difference. It is impressive, and I feel like there's a lot more clarity in the low end, which would definitely be helpful. And I guess that about wraps it up here. Is Reference worth it? I don't know. I feel like, again, the difference was pretty subtle, but based on the results I got from the profiling, I'm fairly confident in saying I guess I really don't have that bad of a room to begin with. So maybe the fact that it is rather subtle is a good thing. Was it this huge night and day difference that made me feel like I was hearing for the first time? No, not really. But I feel like in a room with less acoustic treatment and without angled ceilings and all the other stuff I've got going on up here for me, this would be a really useful piece of software. However, the fact that it offers different phase response modes and has a bunch of different profiles for things like cars, headphones, laptop speakers, phone speakers, and other things like that does seem extremely useful, and I'm sure that's something I'm going to be using a lot myself going forward. With that, a very big thank you to Atom Audio and Sonarworks for co-sponsoring today's video and letting me borrow these S2V speakers, which have been a dream to work with, and I'm really upset to see them go. And of course, Sonarworks for allowing me to test out Reference here. This was something that was really interesting, and I am glad that I'm going to have something that's going to help me work more on the bass end of things, which obviously doing big bassy stuff is pretty important to me. If you have any other tips or titillating tidbits when it comes to the world of monitors or acoustic treatment, feel free to leave those down in the comments below. And of course, I'd love to know your thoughts on Reference, especially if you have it for yourself. What kind of results did you get, and do you think it's worth it? With that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and as always, I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome.